Dear non-cussing people, we are cussing people. Be advised. Hey y'all, I'm Jenn. I'm from Oakland, and I'm a queer, black feminist scholar.
This is Daren, hailing from the mean streets of Anaheim. I'm an introvert, a novelist, and a nerd.
We're early 30-somethings with 3 kids and over a decade of marriage.
This is a podcast about the realities of blackness and adult life. We do adult differently.
This is That Black Couple. Greetings. This is episode 5 on the erasure of black women's work in the mainstream. What are they grabbing this week?
That's your job, not mine.
Ah, shit. The world is stressful right now. The president is calling people out in the NFL for taking the knee, calling them sons of bitches. I don't think we should be drinking right now. Just grab your chamomile. Just be calm.
Just chill out.
Just chill. Grab your chamomile and have a seat. This is That Black Couple. This is Jenn.
This is Daren.
And before we get started, please make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at That BLK Couple, on Facebook at That Black Couple, and look us up on the internets at www.thatblackcouple.com.
You can stream episodes on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and SoundCloud. And you have to rate us really, really high or we're going to be feeling some type of way about it.
Very salty.
So make sure you do that. Make sure you leave positive comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
So on today's episode, we are talking about the erasure of black women's work in the mainstream and how that is rooted in patriarchy. And first things first, we will talk about the Canadian Poet Laureate who stole Still I Rise from Maya Angelou.
Trifling.
Which honestly, on a side note, as we're talking about it,
yeah,
our son is reading about Maya Angelou at this exact moment.
Right.
That's one of the books we bought for him. And
right.
he's all deep
enthralled.
Into it. Right. And at the same time, we're talking about how she's being erased.
Right.
In the world.
Right.
Okay. Sorry. And then from there, we will go on over to the role of black women in the workplace for the conversation. We'll talk about some very public examples of black women's erasure and the ways patriarchy also operates to shut black women like Jemele Hill and Munroe Bergdorf up. And then lastly, in the reflection, we will discuss our own relationships with the erasure of black women and how we navigate that in our lives and in our relationship. We've written a few articles over at watercoolercombos.com covering today's topics. We'll make sure to drop those in the show notes for you. Make sure you go read them. Lego.
All right. So I am really bitter that we even have to record this topic today.
Me too.
Like, I'm not even happy about it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. But I came up on this poet laureate named Pierre de Rousseau, and I hope that that's the way to pronounce that name. But I was kicking it on Twitter, at Jenn Jack, Daren W. Jackson. You can find him there. He's never on, so get after him. But I was kicking it on Twitter, talking to my homegirl, Olivia Cole, author of the Panther in the Highest series, also the author of the forthcoming Conspiracy of Stars, out in January 2018. Cop that on Amazon.
Pre-order now.
I've gotten mine. But I was talking to her because I was mad. She had saw this article about how this poet laureate, this ex-poet laureate who is now deceased, had stolen Maya Angelou's Still I Rise and basically was able to do it because all he did was translate it into French and nobody noticed. And that was how he became a poet laureate. By stealing rap lyrics from people like Tupac Shakur and poetry from black women like Maya Angelou. And I was sitting there and I'm getting pissed, right? So I'm looking at this. But then I'm like, well, of course he did, right? A fucking course he did. I'm not that surprised. So I saw an article on The Root from Michael Harriot who was looking at this whole thing. And he was examining how, I guess there was an article on The Guardian that was showing the plagiarism that this De Rousseau character had gone through. And they actually did side-by-side comparisons of the original poetry to De Rousseau's. And the similarities were just laughable, actually. like laughable. It was almost like you could have dropped it in like a basic Turnitin in like Blackboard, and it would have come up like 70% the same.
But in a different language.
But in a different language, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, so here we are. This white French dude in Canada is plagiarizing Maya Angelou to become a poet laureate. Got it. But when you really think about Black women's work globally, is that really different than how we see Black women treated overall?
No, I mean there's a long history of this.
There's a long history of it.
This is more the norm than anything else.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about how it happens across industries. Michael Harriot made a comparison to Kendall and Kylie, right? Kendall and Kylie. I always say that Kylie looked like a mayonnaise sandwich in 2010. She really did. Kendall. Kendall always been kind of cute. But Kylie looked like she was one of them Osborne kids.
Yeah, she had to put in some work.
She had to put in a lot of work. And I love that meme. I love that meme where they have her looking up. And it's like, ooh, I like that culture, you know? Because she looked like a mayo sandwich in 2010. And then she was like, oh, my sister is on the come up. This is a great, like, algorithm. I'm going to follow this path. It's working for Iggy. It's working for Kim. It's working for Chloe. Oh, I can do this. I'm about to Jubilee this shit. And here she is today, and she's over this huge, like, Kylie Cosmetics or whatever. And now people think that she's beautiful because she has injections and things. And listen, if I had money, I'd be injecting shit too. So don't get it twisted. Like, a bitch would get all types of surgeries. I'm not against that. What I'm saying is that she looked like a fucking mayonnaise sandwich. She looked like something you wouldn't touch on a hot day. She looked like something you'd only make if you didn't have all the groceries you had in your house. If you ran out of shit and you're like, fuck, all I got is mayonnaise and bread.
Like when you have water in your cereal.
Right, and you're like, I gotta eat. That's what she looked like. She looked like that last thing where you're like, damn, all the Kardashians is done. We got this last Jenner left. I'll have the mayonnaise sandwich. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. And my thing is like this, like, get your paper or whatever, but don't do it by extorting and exploiting the ways that Black women in particular move throughout the world in their natural bodies and are not rewarded in the same ways. That's my problem. My problem is that Kylie is unfairly rewarded for some shit she didn't even have paid for, or maybe had on pre-sale or layaway or some shit back in 2010. But now we're sitting here like, okay, you're on like some multi-million dollar industry because of some shit you bought. You know what I'm saying? But Black girls out here killing it and been out here killing it for generations, for millennia. We got homegirl from the On Fleek who came up with On Fleek, and she's still trying to get her shit off the ground. And Kylie out here stealing cultures and made it. And that's what gets me.
Well, I mean, and that's what's always been done. You know, Black culture is always commodified because there is so much value there. So it's very easy for someone who's an outsider to go, wow, this Black culture thing, there's something to that. Let me just, take a slice of this and just take it to the masses and watch them feast over it. Right.
And it's that thing where, people really love Black cultural and Black cultural products, but they don't love Black people.
Right.
And I think about these Phenomenal Woman shirts that we saw. They were really popular back in July. So back in July, I think it's July 31st, was Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And I believe that Women's Equal Pay Day is April 18th. Women's Equal Pay Day is the day when white women would have to work up until that day to make the same amount as the average man would in the preceding year. So what men made in January to December of 2017, it took white women, the average white woman, up until April 2018 to make that same amount. Mm-hmm. But it took Black women, on average, up until July 31st, right? So it took 3 more months, additional months, to make that same amount. And so on Black Women's Equal Pay Day, you saw all these Phenomenal Woman shirts. For people who know Maya Angelou's work, who are familiar with her, it's like, oh, that's lit. What is that? I got excited. I saw these Phenomenal Women shirts. I'm like, oh shit. Maya out here living it up. I hope this is going to her estate. I hope I'm about to put some coins in Maya Angelou's family's pocket. Like, phenomenal woman shirts, that's got to be going to Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
Then you dig deep and you find that all these phenomenal woman shirts are being sold by not even Black people or not even phenotypically Black people. Like, so when we think about Maya Angelou's like this 6-footer. Maya Angelou, thick-waisted, kinky-haired, big lips, dark skin, queer as fuck.
And proud.
You know, ex-sex worker, grew up poor, wrote all about that shit. And so I've always had this kind of kindred thing with Maya Angelou because, like, you know, I'm 6'4", grew up in the hood, kinky hair. I was like, yeah, this woman is brilliant. And she's a possibility model because she's got these like wide hips and these big feet. And she out here and stunning and like not fazed by these like European beauty standards and these ideas of what femininity should look like.
And becoming a U.S. Poet Laureate.
Without copying somebody else's poetry. Exactly. And then, you know, post-mortem, we have people taking her most iconic work, putting it on a shirt, and then selling it. And then not even having, you think that it would say like, in quotations and then put dash Maya Angelou. Her name's not even on the shirt.
Nope.
And of all days to sell this shirt on Black Women's Equal Pay Day. The irony and the gall, right?
And then you see who's wearing it. And, you know, we see Hillary Clinton got one on.
Hillary Clinton had one. It was a bunch of white girls I ain't never seen before. I was like, who that white girl? What's she doing on a phenomenal woman shirt? And then you're like, this is not for you.
Nope.
Maya Angelou was not writing to you. She was not writing about you. This was not yours. And this is the commodification of Black women's labor. This is the commodification of Black women's work. And it's like, you do this after someone has passed on. How do you do this and not feel like shit? How do you do this and not think, wow, I am literally fucking scum? I don't understand that.
I don't get it either, to be honest with you. And when we were talking about this episode right before we started, the one thing that came to mind to me was Dreamgirls. So, you know, I think almost everyone's seen the Oscar-winning Dreamgirls movie with Beyonce and Jennifer Hudson. You know, Jennifer Hudson killed that. She killed that.
Yes, of course
she deserved that Oscar.
Of course.
And one of the parts in that movie, when their group was very early on in their stages, was they were depicting how Black artists would record music. And then a white artist would basically just cover the same exact song and get way more notoriety, get way more fame, get way more money. And then the Black artist often would be somewhat left in the dust. That wasn't like a fictitious thing. A lot of what showed up in the Dreamgirls movie was just based on what actually happened in history. And this notion of white people covering Black artists was a very prevalent thing. It showed up with Little Richard's Tutti Frutti. It showed up with Fats Domino's Ain't That a Shame. It showed up all over the place. And what would happen is, you know, these Black artists, they would be successful. They would actually be known. They'd be touring. They'd be making a lot of money off of these songs. And the record label would say, hey, this is a good song. Let's just give it to this white person, have them do it, have them make a whole bunch of money, have them take this same thing, just like we were talking about, that's, you know, rooted in Black culture and is serving Black people. And let's just have this white person carry it out and serve it to everyone else. All these other cultures, all these white people, and make it big. And it would be not as good. The person would be not as talented. And you think about, there's been so many covers of Tutti Frutti that have just been subpar to Little Richard, right?
Yeah.
And they were making money on that. They were making a lot of money. In a lot of cases, the Black people that actually wrote these songs didn't really even know the copyright laws. So they'd be paid like $1,000.
This is what I always, whenever we talk about this, I think about TLC and how tragic their story was when they had that biopic. And you're looking at this like, damn, y'all could have made so much money. And how they were exploited. They had no idea.
And that's exactly what we're talking about here, exploiting Black women, right? TLC, like a great example. You know, they were just three young women trying to make it, excited. You know, they were successful. You know, people knew who they were. They had chart-topping success, and they thought, wow, we're doing it. And then they checked their bank account, and they're like, wait, it's empty.
I got $1.
It's like, hold on, how did this happen? And you go look around them, and everyone else got money.
Everybody else is paid. All the men,
right? Everyone that's not doing the work that they're doing, right, that's not producing the music that they're making, that doesn't have the X factor that group had.
Right?
They have money; their pockets are lined. But TLC out here bankrupt.
Right. And that's my issue, is like, it's a cultural artifact. It's not like it's a one-off thing. It's not like, it's like, oh, people always say, oh, Black people, educate yourselves. When you hear stories about this, they go, oh, well, Black people need to learn how to read contracts. No, that's not the issue. The issue is not that Black people need to learn how to read contracts. Like, sure, capital education and shit is important, great. But the issue is that there's a system that is set up to game and exploit Black people. That's how the system is created. That's how we have issues like redlining and, other sorts of predatory systems that have for generations worked to actually isolate and exclude us from actually having any intergenerational wealth to hand down to our children and to other posterity and our families. So it's not like, it's like, oh, well, they just need to learn how to read better. That's not what it is. If it was about reading better, then Kylie Jenner wouldn't actually have a career, right? She wouldn't just be being rewarded at like, what was she, like 17 or something when she got her first clothing line or whatever. Right. No, it's both that we are not necessarily, we don't have access to resources that help us to understand these systems, sure. But more importantly is a system of white supremacy and exploitation that says that Black cultural product is more valuable when it is wielded and leveraged by non-Black people, specifically white people. And when we talk about femininity and womanhood, when we think about who gets to be feminine and what that looks like, we are not talking about Black women.
Right. I mean, even going back to the Phenomenal Women t-shirts, right? When you take Maya Angelou's message,
right,
and what that poem was actually about,
right,
and then you slap it on a shirt and let everyone across, the world wear it,
right.
What they're portraying and what they're perceiving Phenomenal Woman to mean is not what
has
she was
nothing
writing
to do
about.
With the substance of what she was writing. That Phenomenal Woman is inherently about stepping away from white beauty ideals and standards and saying that Black women's bodies are perfect the way that they are. The whole point of Maya Angelou's writing career was to say that y'all be shitting on Black women. But still, I'm about to win this shit. I'm about to beast this shit.
And still I rise.
Still I rise. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of being a phenomenal woman. What she was saying was that I'm out here killing it. It was the Ain't I a Woman of Black women's poems. Yeah. It was like, I'm still a woman and y'all still trying to take this shit from me. And so when you slap it on a t-shirt and put Hillary Clinton in it,
Lord.
Child, I saw that and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And people go, oh, well, you're just mad and you're pulling the race card and blah, blah, blah. No, this is not a race card. That's not what this is. You are taking cultural product. You are taking cultural history from someone who has passed on, a dear beloved Black woman hero. Right? A heroine of the Black community who has been an icon for young Black people, specifically young Black girls and femmes, who write poetry and who perform poetry. And you are taking her message and saying, now let's give it to the white girls too, y'all.
Yeah, this is not how you honor Maya Angelou.
This is not how you honor Maya Angelou.
Just like when you take her work and you translate it into French and present it as if you're own.
And
that
then
is
you
not
win
how you
and you
honor
get to be
her.
the Canadian Poet Laureate.
This is the exact way that you erase her.
That's how you erase her. And that's why we're talking about this shit today.
Thank you for listening. We are the proud founders of watercoolerconvos.com, a platform at the intersections of Blackness, culture, and adulting. We started that Black couple to dive deeper into the issues facing young Black millennial folks navigating the anti-Black, anti-queer, white supremacist world today. This podcast is supported by donations and patronage of our listeners and readers of our blog. You should head over there and check out some of the content when you get a chance.
If you would like to become a monthly subscriber or patron and help fund our content, sign up at www.patreon.com/watercoolerconvos. Patreon is spelled Patreon.com. Please consider giving $5 or $10 per month to help us build our platform and grow our organization. We really want to hire new writers and social media people, y'all, but we can't do that without your help. You can also give a one-time donation at www.paypal.me/watercoolerconvos. All donations are welcome. You can stream the show on Google Play, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. When you listen, please consider hitting that heart button, sharing an episode, giving us a 5-star rating, and leaving some dope-ass comments. This helps us with our page views and also gives us more listeners for the show. Thank you so much.
Let's get back to the show. So let's get into the conversation.
Let's do it.
I want to start out with some hard facts, because a lot of people, when you bring up erasure and you talk about cultural appropriation and how people are stealing your culture, they try to say, oh, you're just hating on so and so. You can't stand that Iggy is being so successful. You just don't like the Jenners. No, there's actual real stakes that are tied to this. There are real people that are affected by these things that go down, and so we're going to give you some actual hard facts behind it.
Right.
So, number one, on average, Black women workers are paid only 67 cents on the dollar relative to non-Hispanic white men. So, right. So, just starting out, just as a real broad baseline, right. Black women just ain't even getting paid.
So while non-Hispanic white men out there getting a bottle of Sprite, I had to get a can of Fanta.
Maybe.
Probably
like orange soda. Nondescript.
Generic.
Off-brand.
Got it.
Right. And then Black women also work more hours than white women.
Right.
Right. So this is one of the stats I thought was really interesting. Married Black women with children worked over 200 hours more per year than married white or Hispanic women with children.
Wait, so you said 200 hours more per year?
Per year.
That's 5 weeks.
Yeah. They're actually working 5 more weeks.
So no vacations.
Of time. No vacations, late nights, early mornings.
Right.
Of just work.
Right.
And these aren't like, just some random stats. These are real stats on what's going on in the world.
From where?
These stats are from the Economic Policy Institute. So, this isn't, your mama who did a survey of her friends around the corner.
But listen, don't hate on your mama doing a survey of her friends around the corner, because listen, mama's friends be right.
And honestly, in all honesty,
that's qualitative data, and that's high quality data. That's good stuff.
And honestly, if we really did that type of a survey, it would probably match.
It would match. These
results that we're seeing from the Economic Policy Institute.
I guarantee it would be spot on.
And so, I mean, the whole point here, like as we're talking about Black women's work being erased, I want to bring these stats into the conversation to say they're doing more work. They're working longer. They're getting paid less for their work. And at the end of the day, they're then being erased for all of that extra effort that they're putting in.
Right.
And on the back end of that, there's more loss. So it's not just, oh, I'm not making as much money, or, oh, I have to work harder. But when you make less money, when you have to work harder, it makes it harder for you to actually provide for your family. It makes it harder for you to build wealth. It makes it harder for you to spend time with your loved ones.
Right.
There's psychological, emotional effects.
Right.
There's financial effects. All of these things that come and impact a person's life.
Right.
And all of this trial and turmoil that people are going through, and these Black women are then being erased on the tail end.
And that's what I'm thinking about when you talk about this in terms of like Black women working 200 more hours per year than a married white woman. And I'm thinking about how I always was so bitter growing up because all my white friends would go on vacation. And they always had vacations, and like their moms, I remember them be like, "Oh, I need a vacation. Oh, I've got to get out to Cabo. Oh, I've got to take this vacation." And they were so tired all the time. "Oh, I need a vacation." My mom never took vacations. Like my mother never took vacations. I think she took all of like 2 vacations when I was growing up, and she didn't even take me with her because she was like, "Fuck this shit. I gotta get out of here." And I can't even hate on her because she needed vacation.
Yeah.
And you think about it, like think about how many Black moms like growing up and shit. Especially single moms. My mom's a single mother. Like, can't take any time off. Who don't have anywhere to put their child. I had cousins, luckily, so I could go to my auntie's house or whatever. Or I could go to someone's house from church. But if you're working 5 additional weeks a year just to survive and to feed your family, you're not taking vacation. You're probably not getting enough rest. That's probably contributing to all these increased rates of hypertension and heart disease and mental health issues that we see rampant in Black communities, right? It contributes to, it has all these ripple effects,
right?
All these downstream effects. And that's what bothers me is that people always, like, when we have these conversations about Black women being erased and their labor being erased, they always reduce it to a conversation about dollars and cents, as if the only losses that affect the Black community are going to be found in our wallets, in our bank accounts. As if having schools close or having Black women who teach in these schools being let off of these jobs and there's no other places for them to work. As if having, the opportunities that they've worked for, they go and get these college degrees at these for-profit universities that exploit them for money, and then they don't actually get a job after them. All that's going to impact them is now the loans. No, it's not just the loans. It's not just the schools closing and the schools not recognizing that those Black women have been teaching these kids for all these years. It's the fact that now they don't have a way to take care of their family, and they've invested themselves in institutions that don't invest back in them.
Right.
They've invested themselves in a society that doesn't invest back in them. And that's my other issue. Like, we see issues like, think about Jemele Hill and Munroe Bergdorf. These are two other examples to me where it's like, Jemele Hill, I don't even like sports. Like, anybody who knows me knows I don't check for no organized sports. I think the whole concept of organized sports is patriarchal, capitalistic, and white supremacist. Period. That's it.
Yeah, you've made yourself very clear on that.
I've made myself very clear about that.
You've tweeted about it. You've written about it.
It's everywhere.
Nauseam.
It's everywhere.
It's not hard to find.
It's not hard to find. But Jemele Hill works her ass off. She's a newscaster for SportsCenter. She's been doing this for like, I don't even know how many years. She's pretty much the only Black woman who's really respected doing it.
She's at the top of her game.
She's at the top of her game. All of her peers, of all races and genders respect her. And she legit went on Twitter, earlier this month, and made some comments. I think it was September 11th. She posted some tweets and basically said the same shit we've all been saying about Donald Trump, that he's a white supremacist and that he basically pals around white supremacists. Because that's what he does.
This is not controversial.
It's what he does.
There are a laundry list of receipts.
We have receipts. So she says this. He gets mad. And then the whole White House is like, fire Jemele Hill, because now the White House is trying to get private citizens fired, because this is a thing in the year of our Lord 2017, that the White House now comes out against private citizens to get them fired from their jobs.
And that's what we're concerned about.
And that's
now?
what we're worried about. Kim Jong-un trying to blow our asses up. And he's like, get her fired.
We worry about SportsCenter.
We worry about sports. Exactly. So, but what gets me about this is that Jemele Hill has been out here dealing with all these racist, classist, gendered, sexist, misogynistic assholes, trashing her and treating her like she did not belong in, the big boys game all these years, right? And the moment she decides to talk about politics, which is something that applies to her, right? It definitely applies to her. She is a citizen of this United States, as last I checked. And she has to cover the politics that apply to the people who she's covering. So people in the NBA, NFL, if they're getting called sons of bitches, and, last I checked, Trump was also trying to get Kaepernick fired. Mm-hmm. So she has to cover. This is sports news. And now that she wants to actually speak and be heard on an issue of mass import, she is now being trashed by everyone, including the White House, right? The White House. But what gets me is that it has become a gendered conversation. Like, I've seen Black men like, oh, are we going to support Jemele? Is she going to have our backs? Right? She supported some other like Twitter threads that came through and some other stuff that was kind of like talking about misogyny. And there were some Black men who were like, oh, we were supporting you when you were talking about Trump and now you betray us. I'm like, what, girl? Are you for reals right now? So you going to sit here and tell me that you down with Jemele if she calls out white supremacy, but when she calls you on your misogynist bullshit, you're like, fuck you, never standing up for Black women again. What is wrong with us? What universe is this?
Some people just aren't for the liberation of all people.
Exactly.
And we were watching this unfold on Twitter, where people were all about, oh yeah, let's stand up for Cap. We gotta back him. And it's like, but wait, hold on. You want to support him, but where's the support for Jemele Hill, this Black woman? She's facing a lot too. She stands to lose her job. Right. She stands to lose a way of having a livelihood, just like Cap does. And we were talking about this before about, Colin Kaepernick, he all right.
He'll be all right.
If he don't never throw a football again in his life,
he will be all right.
He'll be all right.
He been giving away thousands and thousands of dollars and ain't got no job. He will be all right.
People are fighting for him for the right for him to play a game and get paid millions of dollars.
Right.
That he actually does not need to make it and survive.
Listen, I'm not going to do a Kaepernick episode. This is not about him. I can't do it. But even thinking about Munroe Bergdorf. Munroe Bergdorf is a trans activist who, was signed by L'Oreal Paris to be a part of their diversity campaign. To be a spokesmodel for their diversity campaign. They fired her within days of hiring her for a post that she had already deleted that said that all white people were racist, which they are.
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret. But in the post, she explained that it's because all white people benefit from white supremacy. And again, we have an article about this on watercoolerconvos.com. But she's been very clear, and I actually been very impressed with Bergdorf about this, because whenever she discusses this topic, she's very clear and very precise in what she's trying to say.
Yes.
She's very clear that her post was about the fact that white supremacy is a system that all white people benefit from. And being a biracial person herself, she said this. She said she's not saying that she hates white people or anything like that. That's not interpersonal. She's saying that as a system, this is about a system of whiteness that operates in a way to make it easier for white people to move throughout the world. And all she's saying is that you need to acknowledge that shit and understand that you benefit from it. And when you benefit from it, some of us, we are harmed by it. And she's like, I don't understand why this is happening to me, right? Now, granted, she's on her come up or whatever, but I wanted to bring up the example of both Jemele Hill and Munroe Bergdorf, because I feel like this is one of those ways where, like, Munroe Bergdorf got fired, right? And she said this is like one of the darkest times of her life, because people were like sending her death threats, and like she had to like go into hiding for a few days or whatever, because this was horrible for her. She doesn't have the platform and the access that someone like Jemele Hill does, right?
Right.
And we also know that trans misogynoir is a thing. And so the way that she's been being treated, because she's also a trans woman, how that is a very particular type of hatred and oppression, and how that's very scary and very violent. And it needs to be recognized as well. And I think that in the cases of both Jemele Hill and Bergdorf, what we're seeing is that we are not fully recognizing the ways that Black women put themselves on the lines for us every single day. They really put themselves out there and risk their lives. They give a lot of themselves. And I say they as if I'm not a Black woman, but you know, like we do this every single day. It's kind of the way we live our lives. And there's labor, there's emotional, physical, intellectual labor that we do every single day, and often for free. Twitter is free 99, right? Jemele Hill didn't have to go on there and use her platform to do what she did. And there's a lot of people with her platform size and larger who haven't said shit.
Yep.
Munroe Bergdorf didn't have to do what she did either. And there's a lot of people with platforms her size and larger who ain't said shit.
Well, and that's the thing, like you said, you're impressed with Munroe Bergdorf, because even after all the fallout and getting fired and all the blowback, she could have just stayed home.
She could have said, I'm tapping out, y'all.
She could have said, this is scary. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to sit here and eat some sandwiches and some chips.
Some mayo sandwiches?
Some mayo sandwiches and chips. And wait for this whole thing to just blow over, and then try to, you know, kind of
try to
rebuild.
rebuild.
But she didn't do that. She went out and she was holding interviews.
Right. And that's the thing. And I feel like a lot of times, like, Black women step up and do the work that other people are either unwilling or incapable of doing, you know?
And we need to support them.
And we need to support that shit and stop fucking usurping and exploiting that shit. And I think that's the same thing, like, your article on Nnedi Okorafor gets to that exact same point. And it happens in all types of industries. And that's another way that it happens in literature, in art.
And this Nnedi Okorafor thing just drives me crazy, because, you know, Nnedi wasn't doing nothing.
Nnedi don't ever bother nobody.
She's just out here, you know, living her best life, smiling. You know, if you look at her Twitter feed, it's just a Twitter feed of Black joy. That's all it is. But, you know, Nnedi Okorafor, she's a very well-known, widely respected sci-fi and fantasy writer. Mm-hmm. Her book, Who Fears Death, a multiple award-winning. Everyone I think that's ever read that book has said how much they love it and how it's just an amazing book. And so the big news that's been happening for her recently is HBO optioned her book for a series. Which, I mean, obviously we know this is HBO. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
That's a big check. That's a lot of notoriety that comes with that. This is a big deal. But what has happened as this news has unfolded, as it's grown and more announcements come out, what we're really seeing is her name pretty much being erased. We saw pictures, you know, lead pictures for the articles where they would chop the book cover to not include her name.
I saw that.
Right. We saw a lot of these articles where they would more closely associate it with the executive producer, who just happens to be George R.R. Martin.
And just happens to be a white guy.
Right. Just happens to be a white guy. They'll have his name in the headline all day. They'll have his name in the first paragraph all day. Nnedi Okorafor, half the time, you're not really reading her name until the end, like in a little informational, oh yeah, this is based on her book that she wrote, and it was really well, known, and people liked it, it was great. But we're going to talk about George R. R. Martin because, he wrote Game of Thrones, and this Game of Thrones thing is really big on HBO, and that's what we, really completely erasing her from the process and not giving her the props that she deserves.
Right.
And like you said, I wrote an article about this. I'm really fired up about it. I wrote a whole lot of information.
You did.
I talked about how this can affect her in multiple different ways.
And she retweeted you too.
Yeah, because it goes to her respect that she gets for the work that she did. It goes towards future projects that she might be working on or future, TV or movie programs that might come up based upon her work.
Right.
And the fact that her name is not even being closely associated with her own work and that this might be something that's a huge success, that could affect future checks that she could get for other things.
Absolutely.
It affects future book sales. If people know, oh, Nnedi Okorafor is behind this story, I gotta go buy all her other books. But if we're not putting her name up front, they're thinking, oh, George R. R. Martin, yeah, just like the Game of Thrones thing.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of ways this can come and hurt her on the back end when you erase her name. And this goes right to what we're talking about of when you erase Black women and tying them to their own work, just like Maya Angelou, like we were talking about earlier. When you take Maya Angelou's name away from phenomenal women, number one, you're changing the meaning of the term itself. Like,
absolutely.
Who fears death? Nnedi Okorafor is
a Nigerian American woman.
Right. She's Nigerian American. When you take that out of it and you put George R. R. Martin in,
right,
it makes it look like, oh, look at this nice white man coming in, doing these stories about
affirmative action stories.
Like,
diversity.
Why are we doing that? Number one, and we know a lot of reason is because that makes it more palatable for white people.
Right.
But number two, it's the disrespect is what drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I think this goes right back to Munroe Bergdorf and to Jemele Hill. Like you said, they're out here on the front lines doing the good work. I'm writing novels. I'm a novelist. I'm a writer. I know how hard it is to write a novel and to get it published and get it out there and get people to read it and then to get awards. Like that's a multi-year process where you could have invested all that time, energy, and effort and gotten zero in the end. You could have had you and your mama and her three church friends read it at the end of the day.
Right.
For all that time and energy you put in.
Right.
But she has this massive book that it's been out for years and people still love it and are still, recommending it to other people to read. And you're erasing her name?
Right. And it's interesting because I feel like this is something that we see is not just in popular culture. It's not just in mainstream culture. This is a phenomenon that we also see in organizing and social action.
Yes.
When we talk about this, I think about folks like Ida B. Wells. So shout out to Megan Ming Francis, her work on the civil rights era and the NAACP. I was reading in her book about how Ida B. Wells was denied entry into the NAACP. Ida B. Wells was the foremost anti-lynching activist. She was a journalist who risked her literal life to tell the story of lynching after her three friends at the People's Grocer in Memphis, Tennessee were murdered and lynched because of a rival grocer's desire to have their grocery shut down. And after being politicized in that way, she had years and years and years of activism around ending lynching, but the NAACP decided that she was too radical to invite to join. And I'm like, this woman did all this work, all these years. She had to leave her home. She had to leave home. This is a woman who had previously been a school teacher. Her parents had passed away and she had to raise her brothers and sisters. This is a woman who had basically given her life to Black people, who dearly loved Black people. And they denied her entry to the NAACP because she was just too much. Right? This is back when the NAACP had been started by white people, and they were worried that she would just kind of piss off the abolitionists and shit, and piss off the old abolitionists and all the old white establishment people and all the respectable, Booker T. Washington Black people. And it's no different than how people still, ignore the fact that Ella Baker was super crunk, right? That Ella Baker was leading young people back when it was only cool to organize around MLK's work, right? Or Malcolm X's work. Fannie Lou Hamer and Shirley Chisholm, all these like darker skinned, thick-waisted, kinky-haired, crunk, dark-skinned Black women who were doing legit political work, but who in a lot of cases we don't hear much about. We don't really hear much about them because it takes other Black women today to like unearth their stories and to give them the credit where their credit is due.
Right.
And that's what I get frustrated about, because I feel like when we think about the moment that we're living in now, we see people like Opal Tometi, we see people like Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors. I'm thinking like Charlene Carruthers at BYP 100. And those first three names are the founders of Black Lives Matter Network. We're thinking about people, I think about obviously my advisor, Kathy J. Cohen at the University of Chicago, Barbara Ransby, who's one of those historians who's been unearthing Ella Baker's work, you know, people like Ashley Yates, you know, people like Melina Abdullah, or Fresco, she's also BYP 100, people like Eve Ewing and Jimmy Hampton, Raquel Willis, Elle Hearns, Wagawe Wajuki, you know, people who are doing legit work, who are Black women who do a lot of their labor, and a lot of it they do for free. A lot of that labor, they do it for free.
And oftentimes we'll find that Black men will build off of their backs.
Right. Black women and femmes be out here. Be out here. You know, trans and cis Black women and femmes, gender non-conforming people, you know, be out here doing work for us, for Black liberation, and they get erased. And it's just, it boils my blood, you know? It boils my blood, because I'm like, y'all wouldn't even have the freedom to do and say the shit that y'all are doing if it wasn't for these Black women and femmes and gender non-conforming folks who are giving their lives every single day, who are giving their labor, who stay up later than they should, who get anxiety and depression, who have hypertension, who have all these things that they're working through in their lives just because they love Black people so much. And that's where I get like there's so many implications here. It's not about, oh, you're just pulling the race card and you're just a hater on Kylie. I bet you Kylie sleeps like a fucking baby. I bet you Kylie sleeps on fucking like 70,000 count threads shipped in from some Persian factory where some little tiny infant children were forced to sew the sheets by hand or some shit. Because she don't give a shit about nobody. She don't care about none of y'all. Or
she doesn't have to.
She don't care about nothing. Nothing. But the people that she's stealing from, the people that she's appropriating, love the fuck out of us. And what have we done for them lately? What?
Yeah, if you didn't know all of those names, look them up. Find out who they are.
Google them.
Blast their names out. Share with your friends. I mean, that's what we should be doing. We should be lifting at the people that are doing the actual work.
We should.
And oftentimes are cast aside or erased.
Right. And then after we look them up and find out who they are, we should pay them what we owe them.
Yes.
Like what you hear? You can find my mom and dad, aka That Black Couple, on the web at thatblackcouple.com. You can find them on Facebook at That Black Couple, and you can find them on Instagram and Twitter at That BLK Couple. If you have questions or comments about the show, email them at thatblkcouple@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
And now it's time for the reflection.
Let's do it.
So yeah, in the reflection, we always get a little personal.
Yes.
And so today we're talking about Black women's work being erased.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to talk about the Black woman that is closest to me, who is sitting next to me.
Who that?
Who married me for some reason and thought it was a good idea to birth 3 children with me.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yes, my wife, Jenn Jackson. I mean, we were listening to a whole bunch of people who were doing the work, and to be completely honest, you're doing the work too. Mm-hmm. You are out there. You're on Twitter. We see the trolls. You know, we write on watercoolercombos.com.
Yep.
A lot of times, what people don't realize is when you run a website or a blog.
Yeah.
You know, I think on our site we're pretty good at keeping some of the somewhat offensive comments in there, just so people can see the actual dialogue that's happening.
Right.
But even us, some of the ridiculous, just racist, homophobic, misogynist, just nonsensical name calling things come through that we even have to erase.
Some of them are funny though.
Yeah, I mean, they are funny because they're just that outlandish.
Yeah.
But I say that to say that you are out here doing a service and doing work, mm-hmm. and a lot of times I think you don't get the right amount of acknowledgement for what you do.
Oh, thank you.
We had an instance recently where you did, to some degree, get some acknowledgement. Where you were at an event, you were on a panel speaking, and I was excited about it, partially because you were up there doing your thing, and I wanted to watch and see it. Mm-hmm. But then also because we had a night where we didn't have kids with us, so we got to be adults. And so I showed up. I was with you. I was on your arm. We're eating eating hors d'oeuvres
Bougie
and stuff.
food.
Right.
It's bougie.
And then the panel started, and I had my camera out, and I was just taking pictures because I'm like, I got to chronicle this. We got to have, this on film.
Yeah.
And I think it was like midway through the panel, the moderator kind of called me out.
Yeah.
like she was talking about you and then said, oh, yeah, and Jen, she has a great husband. Look at him. He's right there being supportive, taking pictures. And number one, it made me feel really uncomfortable because I'm like, I'm not... I did not come here to be looked at and get this type of shine. I'm just here for you.
You didn't have your makeup on?
Right. My face wasn't I had dressed up nice, but it was really just to look nice and to compliment you. It wasn't like, the spotlight was going to be on me.
Right.
But then it also made me very uncomfortable because it was like, somehow you up here on a stage, people are here to hear your opinion and listen to what you have to say. And somehow, even in that moment, people were shouting me out and giving me credit just for being in the room. Like I was in the room taking pictures. That was it. I wasn't doing anything else. I wasn't, providing any type of production support. I didn't write a script for you to say. I was just there taking pictures to say this is my wife and I love her and I want to have pictures of her, shining and glowing.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to me a lot. And it's something that I'm also having to really work through and be very deliberate about it in my everyday life, where I get a lot of credit for little things, like, oh, you watched your kids today. Let's get you a slice of cake because you out here achieving and overcoming all the roles that
I will never forget. I have to say, at my graduation, remember that? At my master's graduation, remember that older woman who was like, "You're here, you're here, and you know what? I just thank you for it." Remember her?
I was stunned. I remember that.
I was like, "Did you know her? Why did she? Wow, who's this lady?"
She had a whole long, drawn out conversation.
She had a speech written.
Like, you are here. You are present. You are being counted in the number. You should be a beacon to black men. Like, what are we doing?
It was my graduation.
I'm not getting a degree.
I was like, "Did you know this is my graduation, child?" She was like, "But your husband." I was like,
I didn't read the books and write the papers.
We're laughing, but it's really not funny.
But this is real life, and that's why I like when we do the reflection, because we take these these bigger, larger subjects that are happening in pop culture or happening in the news cycle or whatever, and we're able to say, look, no, it's not just big stars and celebrities and just what Trump did, whatever. This is real everyday life stuff.
Absolutely it is. And I think in terms of I've obviously been underpaid probably most of my life. I don't think I've ever been paid what I'm worth. I got an engineering degree from USC because I just really like math, and I went to go work at Disney thinking, it's a place where dreams come true. Listen, I graduated at 22? I still believed, okay? I believed. We're going to let that go. It was 9 years ago or longer. I don't know, 11. That's in the past. I'm moving on. But I believed. And I thought I would go to this company. They would take care of me because I trusted that Disney, of all places, would be, a
great family company.
A great fit, yeah. And it wasn't. They underpaid me. I found out later that some people had high school diplomas who were getting paid about the same amount as me. And people who, had less experience than me were getting paid more than me in some cases. Mm-hmm. And that was infuriating, and I was treated like shit. I remember when I was pregnant, people stole my work. When I went out to have a baby, I came back. They had taken my work and paraded it around as if it was theirs. When I got sick with meningitis, people had taken my work and presented it to top level executives. That happened 3 or 4 times.
And not only sick with meningitis, sick
near death.
With meningitis, near death,
while pregnant.
And pregnant.
Right.
And they took that as an opportunity.
Right. They were like, ooh. And then they got an award. Don't forget. They got an award. They got an award. Don't forget that part. But,
because you couldn't fulfill your responsibility, so we got to reward them
So we got to reward them for stepping up. Right. But then I come back and put all the pieces together, and it was like, okay, girl, you're back. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of those things where it's really demoralizing. It's really demoralizing, and you really start to question yourself. And at the time, in my early 20s and mid-20s, I internalized a lot of that stuff. I remember I would grate my teeth in my sleep. I had times where I would just be crying at work. I would just cry. I went to the bathroom, I think, there was a year there where I think I cried every day in the bathroom, at least once a day, sometimes more. And I just cried, and I was miserable. I couldn't really get control over my life because I was in a situation where people were constantly surveilling me. They were taking my work, and they would do it in ways that were very obvious, but it was almost if I couldn't say anything. I was the only Black person on the team, and I was the youngest. And if I ever said anything, it was like, oh, there's Jenn again. Oh, she's always making this about something.
Yep.
I had to work long hours. I remember my boss telling me, oh, well, I want you to be an example for the other people on the team because, if you can do it, then I want them to know that anybody can do it. And I was like, bitch, what are you trying to say? Like, she said it like it was a compliment. I was like, that's a fucked up thing to say. You're trying to say that me, because I'm Black and because I have a small child at home, that if I can do it, then I can be the example. What am I? I'm like, what's that movie, Oliver? Am I fucking Oliver? Like...
How did you pull that reference?
I've never even seen the fucking movie, but I know that the nigga has some struggles. Like, I know he has some struggles. But, like, I just felt like she was like, you're going to be the example, and I'm going to make you an example. And I'm like, and this is a white woman, obviously, right? And so for me, getting paid less, being forced to work additional, I worked like 60 to 70 hours at that point. And then during the summer, we had a process that took even more hours. I was taken away from my family. It was causing mental and all types of emotional stress. I frequently was sick. I remember I was sick pretty much the entire year. I had some form of cold or flu or something.
And you had to work through the sickness.
And I had to work through the sickness. I couldn't take a day off, right? Even when I was breastfeeding my children, And I remember after I got out of that thinking, wow, I don't even know how I made it through those 5 years. I don't know how I did that for 5 straight fucking years. I don't know how I did it. But those are the ways also that corporate America is its own thing. But I think that extrapolates to a lot of ways that we put ourselves in certain laborious kind of situations as Black women and believe that they are the norm. Like, we believe that that's normal. It might be an academic situation. It might be a professional situation. It might be a personal relationship. Yep. It might be an intimate relationship where we feel like we're supposed to just do more physical and emotional labor with a partner, and I think there's a lot of ways that society conditions us, to believe that we are supposed to do the physical and emotional labor in all walks of our lives. So we end up carrying that burden. We end up just thinking that that's something that we're supposed to do, and we internalize it, we're socialized in that way. And that's what I want to push back against and intervene on in this conversation about the ways that we as Black women were erased, but we don't have to internalize it and we don't have to normalize it.
But that is exactly why the erasure continues, because it's not just Black women that are socialized to believe that.
Right.
It's the world at large that's socialized to believe that.
Right.
That you're supposed to take their work and erase them and take credit for it and build and create something for yourself.
I'm sure Dave Rousseau was like, well, she's not using it.
Right. Like, these people in Canada don't know Maya Angelou. Why not me? I mean,
I'll just steal it and change it to French.
Yeah. And,
voila.
I'll change a couple words around, thanks for the inspiration. But I mean, that's what has become the norm. And like you're saying, is we don't have to internalize that. So Black women do not have to accept that and say, well, that's just how it is and that's how it's always going to be.
Right.
And as anyone else that is not a Black woman, we don't have to look at that and say, yes, this is how we're supposed to operate. And yes, this is something that we're supposed to allow to continue with the people that we see around us. We all have a responsibility to call this out and say, no, that is so-and-so who did that. That is their work. They deserve the credit. We should be paying them.
Right.
And not even just paying them, we should be paying them at a premium.
Absolutely. We should be paying them at a fucking premium. Thank you so much for listening to episode 5. You can now find us on iTunes. And now y'all know I don't mess with no Apple and iTunes. It's Skynet. But I'm told that some of y'all like to listen to your podcast on there. So we are there on That Black Couple on iTunes. Please go to iTunes, listen to the podcast, give us all those high ratings and leave comments and share the episodes with all your friends, your little friends from around the way. Tell them to listen to it. Go on Stitcher, do the same thing. Hit them little hearts on SoundCloud. Find us on Google Play, all that drama, all that mess. Then go to Instagram, follow us, That BLK Couple. Go to Twitter, follow us, That BLK Couple. And then hit us up on Facebook at That Black Couple and on the internet, thatblackcouple.com. Thank you. Bye.